For the past 15 years, I've been delivering groceries in Nebraska. A lot of our customers have been using us for a long time, though this story has to do with one household in particular. For the sake of privacy, we'll call them the Wilson family. For almost the entire time I've worked this job, the Wilson family have been using our delivery service. Once, or sometimes twice a week, I'll drop by their place to deliver their groceries. The mama of the house is called Marie. Her husband was called Tex. I ain't sure if that was his real name or not, but that's what he went by, and the guy was a real modern-day cowboy. Wore the whole get-up, and always addressed me as Cowboy. "Morning, Cowboy," he'd say as he saw me coming up his driveway. "Catch you later, Cowboy," he'd say as I bid him farewell. He always said this while bringing two of his fingers to his head, like a real cowboy would if he was lifting his hat or something. I always returned the gesture. We bonded over the years, and would sometimes get lost in conversation with each other. Real nice guy, Tex was. Didn't have the healthiest of diets, though. I could tell by his shopping cart. Seemed like the guy was living off bacon, sausage, and steak. Sadly, the old man's diet caught up with him in the end, and Tex kicked the bucket 5 years after I started delivering to him. I shed a few tears for the guy the evening I heard the news, and had a drink to his memory. Marie kept on ordering from us after that. For 9 or so years, I kept dropping by her place as usual, this time with a smaller haul of groceries than when Tex was still with us. A lot can change over 9 years, let me tell you. I got to watch as their 2 young sons grew up into teenagers, and as their house changed with the times, as Marie sold Tex's beloved motor car, and as her life went on, and she got married to another guy called Phil. Their haul increased after that, as did the number of deliveries I had to make to their house every week. Recently, though, something strange happened when I made one of those deliveries. I came by their house as usual, only to see Tex's old car outside their home, looking just how it had years before, same paint job and everything. Marie must have tracked down the buyer and bought the car back off him. Maybe she was feeling sentimental and wanted to hold on to that piece of Tex after spending so many years without him. Who knows? I knocked on the door, and Marie answered. Strange, I thought. Her face seemed distinctly less wrinkled than I remembered. "Mrs. Wilson," I said, "you're positively glowing." She blushed a little and thanked me, then invited me inside to drop the groceries in the kitchen. "Got old Tex's car back, I see," I said to her. She let out a little laugh. "Did he tell you he sold it then? That ugly thing will be with us until he kicks the bucket." I was a tad confused by her reply, but brushed it off and put it down to the old woman's brain going a little gaga with years. Something else seemed a little weird though. The decor of the house. It was like it had been years ago. Old photos were strung up on the wall of the kids when they were much younger. All of the furniture was like the stuff they used to have in the past. My mind started darting around. Had she dumped Phil? Gone a little doolally or something? Was she trying to relive the old days when she was with Tex? I daren't ask. Didn't want to cause any drama. I walked into the kitchen to put down the groceries. Sitting at the table, eating their breakfast, were Marie's 2 sons. But that's the thing. They weren't teenagers. They were just kids again, like how they looked in all the old photos on the wall. Impossible, I thought. They must just be her nephews or something. She was just babysitting some relative's kids. But they looked so identical. They could have been clones of her children from the past. I put down the groceries and immediately made my way to the front door, not stopping to chat with Marie. Something felt off about the house. I didn't like it. I needed some air. "Leaving so quickly?" she said as I speed walked to the front door. "Yes," I managed to spurt out. "Sorry, I'm in a rush today. Have a good one, Mrs. Wilson." I reached the front door, which was still open, but something made me stop. I can't describe the feeling, but I knew I had to turn and look over my right shoulder, past it into the living room behind me. I trusted my instinct and turned my head. Sat there in an old, familiar armchair was an old, familiar man. "Catch you next time, cowboy," he said to me raising 2 fingers to his head. A strange feeling came over me. Not fear. Warmth. I'd recognize that face anywhere. I gave Tex a smile and raised my 2 fingers out of respect. I then walked out the front door and closed it behind me. I looked out onto their driveway. Tex's old car was nowhere to be seen. Nothing seemed out of place or old-fashioned. Everything was as it should be. Back to normal. Back like it was in my time. I continued on with the rest of my deliveries for the day. I've made many deliveries to Marie since then, and nothing else weird has ever happened to me at that house. I decided not to tell her about the incident, fearing that she'd think I was making fun of her or insulting Tex's memory in some way. I've told my wife and friends about it. They all called me crazy, so I'm sharing my story here. Does anyone have any ideas about what this could have been? I've been racking my head for months now and still can't think of a rational explanation. Did I experience a time warp? A brain spasm? Some sort of glitch in the Matrix? I have no idea, but I was completely lucid. Didn't have anything weird in my system, and saw and heard everything, plain as day. I don't know what to make of all of this, but I will say, Tex, it was good to see you again, cowboy. There's a curse in my family that's persisted for the past 4 generations. To be honest, the thought of it keeps me up at night sometimes, as I know pretty soon it's going to start affecting me too. Back in the day, 2 men went onto native land in Standing Rock, North Dakota, and did a spot of grave robbing. One of those men was my great-granddad. By all accounts, not a nice guy. Neither was his buddy he went with. My ancestor was 31 at the time he did this despicable thing. I don't know if he dug up one person or multiple, but his get-rich-quick scheme came with some serious consequences. As the story goes, about a week after, he started complaining about a visitor. He told all his friends about this dark, shadowy figure that would follow him wherever he went. Sometimes he'd be sitting with his buddies, and all of a sudden he'd go into a terrified frenzy, screaming about the shadow man outside the window. Nobody else ever seemed to see it. They figured he'd just lost his mind. He lived the rest of his days as an outcast, disowned by everyone who once loved him. Can't say I feel sorry for the guy after what he did. Unfortunately, the consequences of his actions have passed down the family line. You see, whenever any male in my family turns 31 years old, and I mean right on their 31st birthday, they all start complaining about seeing the same shadowy creature. They describe it as the black outline of a man, but with no facial or bodily features, just a black void in human form. What they all say it does have are 2 piercing red eyes. No mouth, no nose, no hair, just 2 red eyes that seem to stare straight through you. It happened to my granddad, his brothers, my father, and my uncles. They all suffered with visitations. My father still does. Sometimes the figure comes once a week, sometimes multiple times a day. There's no real pattern to the visitations. According to all of them, it just appears out of the blue, at any time, in any place, at any distance. Its horrible red eyes looking right at you. It could be standing in the middle of a crowd, or alone in an empty field while you're out for a walk. You could move several states away, and you'd still see the damn thing looking at you through a window. It drove my grandfather insane. He lost his mind in his 50s. 2 of his brothers ended their own lives, citing the visitor as the main reason. His last brother ended up moving away and cutting all contact with us. Don't know what happened to him in the end. One of my uncles too has gone mad from paranoia. Lost his family, his career, everything. He knew it was coming when he turned 31, but that didn't help him prepare. My other uncle jumped from a suspension bridge, said he'd had enough of the red-eyed man. Without exception, they all suffered from insomnia. The thing apparently came a lot more at nighttime, would stand at the foot of their beds for hours on end. My father, luckily, is still with us. I don't remember much of what he was like when I was a kid, but my mother tells me he hasn't been the same since he turned 31, back when he started complaining about the shadowy visitor. He's a real quiet guy now, never says much, and always seems to be on edge. I'm a male. At the time of writing this, I'm 29 years